Feels like ages ago since Donald Trump was allowed to actually speak on Twitter.com, but he's found his own way of engaging in Twitter's politics, as it were. Behold, the website that effectively is Twitter, but for Trump. And if you notice here, I could actually hit this tweet button, and it will automatically spam the tweet from Donald Trump. Instead of him tweeting on his own, what he seems to be doing is trying to make it to where all of his sycophants will effectively tweet everything that he's doing. It's like a retweet, only from his own personal website, donaldjtrump.com. So yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. I figure maybe it's a good idea to look at some of the things that he's telling his constituents. First of all, maybe really, really important to see in this sign-up area. Do you want to be notified when President Trump sends a message? He's still calling himself President Trump. He's not given that up. He has literally not given up the idea that he is still the President of the United States. He is quite literally the usurped king now. And he's very mad that the adventurers put the quote proper king on the throne. It makes him very upset. And I just can't. I just can't. Let's go ahead and look at some of these. He seems to be pushing out information on this much less frequently than he did when he was doing it on Twitter. Because on Twitter, it was like every single time he had a bowel movement, 15 tweets came out. Now they seem to be evenly spaced out by about 2 or 3 hours or so. I also like how we have the "From the Desk of Donald J. Trump." This is the same kind of aesthetic that the Daily Wire goes through when it's trying to push Matt Walsh on you. And I think that's really telling. He knows exactly who his audience is. Josh Hawley, our fantastic senator from the beautiful and great state of Missouri, has a fantastic new book just out this week about the terrible big tech companies and their attempt to ruin our country. It's called The Tyranny of Big Tech, and it has my full and complete endorsement. Buy it now. So, I'm not even gonna lie, I find it fucking funny because that book is currently sitting as a bestseller, and Josh Hawley has been celebrating that on Twitter. And it's really ironic, because you would think that in a world where the tyranny of big tech was actually something you needed to worry about in the way that Donald Trump thinks, in the way that Josh Hawley thinks, then maybe writing an entire book about their oppressive tyranny would probably not become the bestseller. But that little bit of logic doesn't, seem to actually ride with people like Trump. The idea that should not be censored. In the world where big tech is actually doing the things that Trump is saying it's doing, you would think that a book like that would be censored. You would think. But who knows? Okay. Here's another one. At 6:31 in the morning on November 4th, a dump of 149,772 votes came into the state of Michigan. Biden received 96% of those votes, and the state miraculously went to him. Has the Michigan State Senate started their review of the fraudulent presidential election of 2020 yet, or are they about to start? If not, they should be run out of office. Likewise, at 3:42 in the morning, a dump of 149,739 votes came from the state of Wisconsin, also miraculously given to Biden. Where did these votes come from? Both were state election changing events, and that is on top of the other corruption, without even including the fact that neither state got legislative approval, which is required under the United States Constitution. So, Trump, buddy, pal, guy who spends more time golfing than trying to figure out how to get kids out of cages, don't worry, Biden's really fucking bad at that too. Don't worry, you're not alone. But I do have to tell you, my friend, have you considered that by telling every single person, every one of your constituents, that mail-in voting was bad and fraudulent and they shouldn't do it, that maybe the 149,000 votes coming in is the shipment of mail-in votes that would all primarily be for Biden? Mail-in votes generally end up being more democratic anyway, but especially in this election where you were flat out telling your constituents that none of them should engage in mail-in voting at all, and having them question every single bit of information in regards to mail-in voting, why would it be any surprise that the vast majority, an overwhelming majority of those votes that come in end up being for Biden? Now, it's important to note that there's a lot of information that is left out of this particular conversation. And this is not like this is on Twitter, where Trump's only got 280 characters to work with when he's trying to figure out how to let his message get across while he's on the toilet. He's able to do practically anything he wants on this website as far as disseminating information to his constituents. Notice how in the first phrase, he says that 149,000 votes come through for Michigan, and Biden receives 96% of them. But when he talks about Wisconsin, magically, the percentage of votes that went to Biden are not considered. He just says these votes came in and were miraculously given to Biden. We don't get a percentage, and I don't for the life of me believe that these votes only went to Biden, every single one of them. Or if it's like 170,000 votes that came in and he's only counting the 143. There's a lot of very manipulative methodology happening here. You would think with a percentage in the very first statement, we would find a percentage in the second statement if the second statement is meant to show that there is actually a parallel between these events. But without a percentage, without knowing exactly how many of that 143,000 votes went to Trump or Biden, we have no way of knowing that. Over and above the fact that I just don't believe the shit that he says, it is important to point out that the actual language here is not consistent within itself. We can go on to the next thing in here. And mind, this website gets updated all the time. He posts on this all the time. But this next one from 9:03 a.m. The Federal Election Commission in Washington, D.C. has totally dropped the phony case against me concerning payments to women relative to the 2016 presidential election. It was a case built on lies from Michael Cohen, a corrupt and convicted lawyer. A liar, in fact, who was so corrupt that he was sentenced to 3 years in jail for lying to Congress and many other things having nothing to do with me. I thank the Commission for their decision, ending this chapter of fake news between two sleazebag lawyers, Michael Aventi and Michael Cohen. We were all about to witness law and justice in our country at its lowest. So I like how he mentions our country being at its lowest here, but the fact that he's even still talking about a lot of that stuff that happened 4 years ago, really weird. I don't know all of the information where the Michael Cohen case is concerned. I don't know enough about it to really honestly comment about it. But if somebody in chat does, then that could be incredibly useful. But for me, I actually do not know. I don't know a lot of the details. where that is concerned. But here's one that I might actually be able to offer a little more commentary on. The fake news media, working in close conjunction with big tech and the radical left Democrats, is doing everything they can to perpetuate the term the big lie when speaking of the 2020 presidential election fraud. They're right in that the 2020 election was a big lie, but not in the way they mean. The 2020 election, which didn't even have legislative approvals from many states, which is required under the U.S. Constitution, and was also otherwise corrupt, was indeed the big lie. So when they try to sell the American people the term the big lie, which they do in unison and coordination, think of it instead as the lie, which they as the greatest fraud in the history of our country. An even greater hoax than Russia, Mueller, impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, or any of the other many scams the Democrats pulled. So wait a minute. Where in the Constitution... Yeah, Atheist Man has it right there. Where in the Constitution does it say that? First of all, the fake news media, working in close conjunction with big tech and the radical left Democrats. So he's already having to appeal to a giant conspiracy theory to argue that the election was rigged against him. Have we ever had a president that ran so hard on the idea that the election was stolen from them? Have we ever had a president at any point in time in the United States that clung to power so hard that after they lost, suddenly everything is the worst in the world? And I think this is why we get so many people in our comment sections, on Facebook, on social media, saying Trump is going to be back at X time. Q says so. Q says Trump is going to be back. Trump is coming back strong. Dude can't shut the fuck up about coming back and getting his power back. Constantly. So the closest we came to this was Richard Nixon, but that wasn't the election. Yeah, that is definitely a different conversation, but it is close. The fraud there happening also where Nixon is concerned as well. And of course, we have the propaganda here. The Save America from President Trump, talking about who he endorses. He's also getting mad at Liz Cheney, saying that they have no business in a Republican Party leadership. They want leaders who believe in the Make America Great Again movement and prioritize... Okay, so literally he's saying he doesn't want Republicans who aren't part of his cult. That's what he's saying. He needs people to be part of the MAGA cult, and if they're not part of the MAGA cult, he's upset. Trump, come on, dude. We have hundreds of thousands of people in the United States that are politically aligned on various different vertices, if we're looking at the fucking political axis tests. Not everybody has to agree with your goddamn cult movement. Giant failure that it ultimately ended up being. Said, is he gonna split the Republican Party? That is a very good question, though honestly, I wouldn't mind if he did. Also, thank you very much, Jirana Cute Cthulhu, for the raid. Thank you. What are you guys doing over on your stream? Unfortunately, in this one, we're talking about real life stuff, which really sucks. It is not the happiest thing in the world, but, you know, United States politics is dumb, and yet, here we are. Here we are doing our thing. Let me open Volume Mixer and lower OBS just a little bit. That was quite the noise just a second ago. There we go. Sir Isaac says, Trump's divide and conquer technique works great on the battlefield, but not so great in a representative democracy. True. Garnet Cthulhu says, politics in general are dumb. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I will quote Vosh here for shits and giggles. Politics is dumb, but very important. But it's very fucking dumb. It's very dumb. And but the thing is, though, is we can sit here and go through all of these. With Trump getting yeeted off of Twitter, now he just has an unlimited area here to throw his shit. Now, granted, it's getting seen by fewer people, so that's good. Fewer people are seeing Trump's messages. He's able to cause a lot less harm as a result of that. But Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Said this blog is a mess. Yes, it is. It is. It's a giant freaking mess. And I'm honestly, I'm not flabbergasted that this is happening. It makes sense. I'm just flabbergasted that he's still calling himself the president. Like, I'm curious. Is there actually a law here about calling yourself the president after you've been taken out? Like, I don't think there is.
No, because even after the president, or still a president, Obama, president. He technically was a president.
He was.
Always going to now be President Trump.
I just know that when I look at the words of President Trump now, knowing that his entire narrative revolves so heavily on the idea that the election was stolen, it feels really weird. It feels almost like fraud for him to just sit there and say it over and over again. And yeah, I know that we say like President Bush, President Obama. I know that we say those things, but I think when it comes to Trump, he's the only one out of all of those that has clung to it so hard. And actually, in common parlance, we refer to them that way. But I think in a lot of cases, we actually talk about them based on their titles that they hold now as well. Yeah, it's definitely a flex for him. It is. So are we 100% this is Trump and not fake? This is from Trump's website. This is him talking about his administration. They say that this is okay, so we could actually go over this part right here real quick, their about section. We are committed to defending innocent life and to upholding the Judeo-Christian values of our founding. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and get something out of the way. The United States was not founded on Judeo-Christian values. The United States was founded on a hefty amount of Christian values, but the Judeo part in there only exists because people like Ben Shapiro and people like Dennis Prager have actively popularized the idea that they could be included in the club too. That's it. So are you confusing impeachment with conviction? How would I be confusing that? I've not mentioned either of those things in the last 3 minutes in this report. I've literally not mentioned either of those things right now. I know that he mentioned impeachment and how it was a hoax. But the next part, so we know that this is obviously talking about the Judeo-Christian values things, which is not a thing. That's just a Prager and Shapiro construction. The defending innocent life part, that is the signal for anti-abortion. That's been a Republican talking point for all kinds of ages. That's fair, Senator Borbus. Okay, understood. We believe in the promise of the Declaration of Independence and that we are all made equal by our Creator and that we must all be treated equal under the law. Okay, cool. Then maybe he should have done literally anything to deal with the disparities that we have in racial convictions in the United States. This one is a fucking joke. He literally could have done a metric fuck ton to help with this, and he decided not to. In fact, actually, he even took trans people out of the military. Equal under the law, my fucking dick. Equal under the law, my flaming scrotum. We know that our rights do not come from government, but they come from God, and no earthly force can ever take those rights away. That includes the right to religious liberty and the right to keep and bear arms. Okay, so this idea that rights do not come from the government, they come from God. I don't like this. I think that the idea that rights come from an agreement that human beings have with each other that we agree upon for pragmatic reasons because we find things to be demonstrably less harmful to be infinitely more compelling than trying to argue that rights come from God. The only argument that I've seen in this favor that I think is even functional is that if you argue that human rights come from God, then they become unassailable in a court of law. But even then, that means that when we revoke rights from people by taking them into prison, we are then violating God's law somehow. So no, I don't like this. I think that this is an incredibly dumb way of framing human rights. Completely and totally. We believe in rebuilding our previously depleted military and ending the endless wars our failed politicians in the past got us into for decades. So I do agree on one hand that we definitely do need to get rid of the endless wars that we're stuck in. The war on terror is literally an endless war. Like, terrorism is a constantly shifting idea and definition, and waging a war against it doesn't function very well. You literally are stuck in a perpetual war. On the other hand, there are certain countries that if we were to pull our military out completely, it would leave essentially a power vacuum where several people would get their rights stripped away from them as a result, meaning that the United States is the lesser of two evils in many cases. It should probably be a good idea to not frame the United States military's occupation in various territories as a good thing, though, as I've seen people try to do. It should be framed more accurately as the lesser of two possible evils in a variety of scenarios. We embrace free thought, we embrace and welcome robust debate, and we are not afraid to stand up to the oppressive dictates of political correctness. So, this is literally just him saying he won't be polite. This is literally him just saying that he doesn't want to be polite. That's it. As far as the free thought thing, I find it funny that he has this part about free thought here in his about section, when he literally argues in everything on the desk section of the website that people who don't thoroughly embrace MAGA are not true Republicans. Imagine embracing free thought so hard that you engage in no true Scotsman fallacies. We know that the rule of law is the ultimate safeguard of our freedoms, and we affirm the Constitution means exactly what it says, as written. Alright, so this seems to be a constitutional originalist position, which is largely a useless fucking position. The Constitution is a living document, and if anybody doesn't believe it's a living document, we wouldn't have had amendments to it after the fact that have been codified into law. Also, arguing that something means exactly what it says as written ignores the fact that anything, once it is penned onto paper, is up for interpretation. Various levels of interpretation, and yes, there is an original author's intent that can be read into something, but arguing essentially from the originalist position that something says X as written ignores the fact that maybe, just maybe, there was something missing in the Constitution. Again, we literally have a bunch of amendments on the thing right fucking now. We support fair trade, low taxes, and fewer job-killing regulations, and we know that Americans must always have the most powerful military on the face of the earth. Why does America need to have the most powerful military on the face of the earth? This feels like a hyper-nationalist position here. Not to mention, just throwing out there, imagine being the country that oppresses a whole bunch of other countries with your military. Now imagine that your military downsizes at some point and you no longer have the ability to oppress those people. What happens when those people end up fighting against you? I could see you arguing that we need to have the best military at that point, because it would be the only safeguard from the demons that we ourselves fucking created. Also, the point about lower taxes. Look, I understand if you want to argue low taxes. I understand if this is something that matters to you. But at the end of the day, taxes are how we actually get infrastructure working. Taxes are how we get things working in the public sector. And especially if you want any kind of healthcare or anything like that, you're going to need to argue for taxes at some point for someone. I personally think that multi-billionaires should be taxed infinitely higher because, historically speaking, when we tax corporations higher, they end up engaging in practices that do everything in their power to lower their tax burden, and several of those practices they have to engage in end up directly helping their workers. Things like having to expand and create more jobs so that they can get tax breaks as a result of that. Paying their workers more so that the net amount that they actually have sitting in their banks is lower. So their income for the year is less taxable. Those things are good things to force a company to have to do. Thinking that the company just having low taxes is going to automatically make it trickle down its economics for everybody going down forward is a fucking fantasy. TNM Bake, thank you very much for the subscription. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How much more is it? Okay, there's only 2 more here. There's only 2 more. We can do this. We believe in law and order, and we believe that men and women of law enforcement are heroes who deserve our absolute support. I don't like this argument at all. I don't. I really, really don't. Because here's the thing. While, yes, being in law enforcement is risky, I refuse to argue that people in law enforcement are necessarily heroes. Hero is a title that you earn based on the actions that you engage in, not a title that is granted to you because of the job description that you hold. A fireman is not a hero because he is a fireman. A fireman is a hero because he does something as a fireman. Just like a policeman is a hero if they engage in a heroic act as a police officer. But merely being a police officer does not automatically bestow them the fucking title of hero. This gives a free pass to corruption in Law and Order, and I do not like that. I agree, Sinister Purpose, we should not worship professions by virtue of their profession. No profession should be worshipped. People in those professions, based on the things that they do and the decisions that they make, that is much more important. And finally, he says, we believe in free speech and fair elections. We must ensure fair, honest, transparent, and secure elections going forward, where every legal vote counts. Cool! If that's the case, then maybe you should accept the fact that you're no longer the president of the United States, my dude. Probably a good idea. Probably a good idea. But what am I what am I even saying at this point? Of course he's not going to accept the fact that he's not the president of the US anymore. It's inconvenient to him and his brand and his particular grift in the last 10 years of his life to do so. I refuse to believe that he is so deluded into thinking that he actually has won. I am more convinced that this is a business strategy, and he knows it makes him money, and he knows that the money he gains from it protects him largely from issues going forward, and as a result, he continues to engage in that behavior. That makes a lot more sense to me than him being so thoroughly deluded that reality and him have allergic reactions to each other. But that's just me. But anyway, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of DonaldTrump.com? His new Twitter substitute trying to get his constituents to spam his shit over social media anyway. His everything on here. This is just a fustercluck of a website. This is really just a fustercluck of a website. Honestly. Anywho, if you are watching and you enjoyed this content, please consider hitting the like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, follow over on Twitch if you have not done so already. Hurrah! Thank you very much for the follow, demonstrating exactly what everybody should be doing if they have not done so up to this point. Kiaza, thank you very much for the follow again. Again, literally demonstrating exactly what to do. If you are watching this and you want to be part of a ongoing conversation or suggest videos for me to do or just hang out with other people who enjoy the channel, please consider joining the Discord. There's a link in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube, or you can type !Discord in the live stream chat if you are watching on Twitch live right now. With all that said, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching. Hope to see you in another episode. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.